Right, now I want to talk about something that is really, really important if we want to be successful in business, and that is creating a great customer experience. This is so important. It is the absolute focal point. It's the point of focus and concentration of the very best and most successful companies of all sizes worldwide. Because without customers buying again, the company has no future. There's not a single company alive that can survive on a single customer. I've had all kinds of experiences where, for example, you see advertisements for a restaurant and you go to a new restaurant and the restaurants are beautiful, or the advertisements are beautiful, the restaurant's lovely, it's expensive, lovely decor and everything else, and then the service and the food are mediocre. And so what happens is you never go back. I went to a restaurant recently, very high ratings, very expensive, within the Hyatt Hotel and everything else. And the food came out and it was cold, and they took it back and it came out and it was overcooked, and they took it back and it came out and they'd forgotten the vegetables. And it was an embarrassment. My friends took me there and said, "You're going to love this restaurant. It's a really great restaurant." Finally, after the first problem, I called the manager. I said, "You know, this is quite unusual to happen," and I'm very polite because you don't want them spitting on your food. And he said, "I'm sorry this has happened. We'll change it." It came back and it was another mess. And then they brought the wrong dish to the wrong table. And then they brought the bill and they added the bill up wrong. And they charged twice for something else and charged for something we hadn't had. And at the end of this, he said to me, the manager came up and he said, "You know, you've had a terrible experience here tonight. I'm so sorry about this experience. But I hope it won't cause you not to come again and give us another chance." Barbara and I looked at each other and said, "You must be kidding. I wouldn't come near, this is like ground zero for bombing. I wouldn't come near here again." So my point is that creating a great customer experience is the ultimate end of business, and that's what we'll talk about now, because this is life-changing. Many companies have paid millions of dollars to learn what I'm going to teach you and have spent tens of millions of dollars installing it and become billion-dollar companies as a result. And I'll give you one example a little bit later. Okay. Create a great customer experience. We say how people feel after they do business with you determines whether they buy again. How they feel. Remember we talked about earlier is the type people's feelings afterwards. Now, do you know what causes people to buy your product? How they think they will feel after they've done business with you. We always buy in anticipation of the emotion that we think we will experience after we have bought your product or service. Will we feel happy? Will we feel fulfilled? Will we feel proud? Will we feel wealthy? Will we feel thin? Will we feel vibrant? Will we feel more popular? Will we have greater status? And so on. So they'll even, one of the greatest advertisements in history, I was a copywriter for many years, was an advertisement to sell the most popular American pianos of the time. Give me the name of one of the big piano manufacturers. I'm sorry? Steinway pianos. This is at a time when they're trying to get people to buy pianos, and pianos were expensive. So they came out with a long-form copy ad, and it shows a woman sitting at a Steinway piano, and the headline was, "They all ignored me until I sat down and started to play." Anybody remember that ad? That made Steinway the biggest manufacturer distributor of pianos in the United States. Because people looked at that, and what did they want? They wanted to feel everybody looking at them with reverence and esteem and amazement at how well they could play. They all ignored me until I sat down and began to play. Isn't that a great ad? And there's a book that I read when I was writing. It's called The 100 Greatest Ads of All Time. One of the other great ads, by the way, was by Ogilvy and Company. It was for Rolls-Royce. Do you remember Rolls-Royce? This ad, where they're trying to bring in the Rolls-Royce into the U.S., nobody ever bought one, most expensive car in the world at that time. It said, at 60 miles an hour, the only sound you can hear in a Rolls-Royce is the ticking of the clock on the dashboard. And people wanted to drive an absolutely beautiful luxury car that was quiet. Because most cars at that time were noisy, didn't have undercarriage protection, you could hear the wind and everything else. And that made Rolls-Royce one of the most successful cars. So people buy it because of how they expect they will feel. And here's another discovery we've made, is that people buy only when they can see themselves using and enjoying your product or service. Now, what John did with his presentation was very interesting. He showed you a picture of yourself with your eyes closed, relaxed, while your subconscious mind was being reprogrammed. So everybody here saw themselves sitting with their eyes closed and the music playing. Some of you even thought about the speaker phones you would use or the earphones you'd use and so on. Isn't that true? It's just because that is how people think. So how people feel, how people think they will feel is why they buy, and how they do feel as a result of using your product or service, coming to your restaurant, is why they buy again. So it was what makes a great customer experience. So we say, what does it do? A great customer experience makes the customer happy. Aristotle said, going back to the beginning of philosophy, 350 BC, that the single primum movum, the major moving force in human life, is the desire to be happy. And so what a good customer experience does is it makes your customers happy. You'll find, by the way, your very best companies are obsessed about making sure the customer's happy. If the customer's not happy, they really worry about it because they multiply that customer times a lot of other customers. It used to be, by the way, that if a customer was dissatisfied, they would tell 10 to 13 other people. Today, they go on the internet and tell 10 or 1,300,000 million people. And if they're happy, they will tell 5 to 8. If they're unhappy, they will tell unlimited numbers. They'll go on. And you can, some companies for a little while began to ignore the internet. There's a couple of people commented on the internet. Do you hear about United Airlines? United Airlines, there was a situation where this fellow shipped his musical instruments on United Airlines, and the musical instruments came off, and they were all beat to crap. And he videotaped the stuff coming off and falling down the United Airlines column and going onto the carousel, kabang, kaboom, boom, kaboom, bunk, kaboom, and this beautiful instruments, and a tuba, not a tuba, but a cello, violin, and everything else. And he videotaped this, and he went to United, and he said, I'd like recompense for this. And they said, nah, that's your problem. This sort of stuff happens. Put in a form. We'll send it to insurance in Bangladesh. They'll process it 2 or 3 years. So he put that onto the internet, put it onto YouTube. It got 13 million views. Cost United Airlines millions of dollars in canceled flights. They watched the cancellations. As that played and replayed, they watched the United Airlines cancellations go up. They immediately came back to them, bought them all new equipment, and said, please take it off the air, because it made the customer unhappy. Okay. Second, a great customer experience builds and maintains loyalty. It causes people to be loyal to you and makes it very difficult for other people to sell their products. Makes it very difficult for them to get in the door. It generates repeat business. A good customer experience makes people want to buy from you again and think about buying from you again when they need your product or service again. The perfect customer experience is the question, what would have to happen? We call this the chemical question, WWH2O. What would have to happen? WWH2O for a perfect customer experience. Now I'm going to ask you a very simple question. How do you find out what you have to do to give a perfect customer experience? You ask your customers and they'll tell you. I was working with a major $180 million trucking company a few years ago, and they had installed the most sophisticated package tracking insurance system for packages that their trucking companies picked up and dropped off. And these trucking companies will come to your place to pick up your stuff, they'll take it on, they'll drop it off, they'll pick up more stuff and so on, and that's what they do. Anyway, so they put in this very sophisticated computer tracking system, so once the number was in there, they could tell you where it was, and they announced proudly, full-page ads, Jones Trucking now has this capability. If ever your package is lost, broken, or stolen, we can replace it or fill the insurance forms out quickly, easily, and efficiently, and make you happy with your experience. And their sales went down. And they couldn't believe it because they had spent 2-3 years putting this system in place. And so they brought in a group of customers, a focus group behind a black window and so on. And they asked them, they're all shippers. They're all people who shipped all the time. And so they asked them, what are the companies you like the best? What are the companies you like the worst? What are the things you want more or less of in shipping experiences and so on. And finally they asked the question that they brought them there to ask, did you hear about this new technical high-tech system that Jones Trucking has put in to help track lost, stolen, or broken packages and get you recompensed or replaced very quickly. They said, yes, we heard about that. We saw all the ads. Well, what do you think of it? They said, we don't think much of it at all. And here's all the Jones executives who approved this, green-lighted this whole $2 or $3 million expense. And they said, well, why not? He says, because when we ship, we don't want our packages lost, broken, or stolen and then promptly paid for. We just want them to get to our customers. They said, well, what would make you happy? Well, and now notice what's happened. What would make us happy would be that the person who picks up the package from our customer to be delivered is positive, well-dressed, polite, fills out the forms correctly, and the person who delivers it, acting on our behalf, is also well-dressed, positive, and delighted. Has anybody here ever shipped anything recently with either UPS or Federal Express? Do you hear what I just said? That was the research that it came from. They show up, they're well-dressed, they're polite, they've got all their things, they fill it out, they act as delegates or ambassadors of the shipping or the receiving company, as well as their own company. So they went back and they changed their whole system so that the people were well-dressed, positive, polite, filled out the systems and everything, and Jones Trucking Company took off. It's still one of the most successful trucking companies in the United States. But what they did is they spent millions of dollars trying to give customers something they didn't even want. They didn't even want to hear about lost, broken, or stolen packages, much less bragging about how well we take care of you once we've lost, stolen, or broken one of your packages. So what would have to happen? Find out. Don't go spend lots of money. Don't imagine yourself, because sometimes what customers want is very easy to give. Now, what is the most important thing you could do? Of all the things you could do to make your customers delighted, to make them happy, what's the most important thing? And make sure that we do that. Make sure that we do that. And number 3 is, what is the most important change you could make in the way you deal with customers today, or the way that you interact, or the way that you even determine what the customer experience is? What one thing, what change could you make immediately that would help to create the perfect customer experience? Now, there's 4 levels of customer satisfaction. The first is where, the first is where you meet expectations. Now, it used to be that companies about 10 or 15 years ago, before the customer satisfaction movement really kicked off, companies actually advertised, we meet expectations every time. If you come in for a hamburger and you order a hamburger, you know what you're going to get? A hamburger. And they thought that was a claim to fame, is we meet expectations. And so whatever becomes the maximum becomes the minimum for the next leapfrog. And so pretty soon, everybody was meeting expectations. And the first thing they did is, what do you expect? See, now this is really key, is to find out what people expect when they patronize you. Sometimes we can think that, well, people expect this, but we are just guessing in the wind. We're just whacking out blind. We don't know. Ask people what they expect. Because you know what the major source of negative emotions, which leads to unhappiness, depression, recession, suicide, and all kinds of things? The major source of negative emotions is frustrated expectations. You want to go into all of the libraries of psychology, basically it comes down to one thing, is we expected a certain thing to happen, and it didn't happen. We expected a certain person to be there, a certain job to work out, a certain relationship to be happy. We expected it, and our expectations were frustrated in some way. So what will make your customers unhappy faster than anything else is for you to not fulfill their expectations. And you must be clear what those expectations are. And how do you find out their expectations? You ask them, what do you expect from us, normally and naturally, that we need to deliver to make you happy? Nobody's going to say, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you how to make me happy. Are you kidding? Everybody wants to be happy. They'll tell you, well, if you just do this and this and this. In a restaurant, you go into a restaurant, you know what people want? When they come into a restaurant, they want to be seated promptly. And once they are seated, they want to be brought something promptly. And they want water on the water immediately. None of this, well, if you want water, you have to order it. Because we're trying to be clean and green. You cheap bastard, you just don't want to wash the glasses. And the next thing they want is they want you to take an order, a drink order, if you're going to have wine or something. They want you to take a drink order, fulfill it, and get you consuming something. Because why? When people go to restaurants, they're already hungry. They don't want to sit there. Have you ever gone to a restaurant and they eventually seat you and wait you for 15 minutes? I have with my kids. I'm not going to extend this, but and with my kids, if I had to wait, and I had kids. When kids are hungry, they're far worse than you are when you're hungry. I mean, they don't have no reservations. They start to fight with each other, and they get angry and they cry and everything else. So I would go like this. like this. I would like this. And my kids would say, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. You're making a scene. Everybody's looking at you. You're bloody right they are. I want them looking at me, especially I want the waiter looking at me, all right? So my kids started to call this goalposts. Oh, hurry, look how Dad's going to do goalposts. And now my kids are all growing up, and you know what they do? They sit down and they don't get service. You know what they do? Goalposts. Boom, we're going to do a Dad. And it's amazing. People come running. When you start doing goalposts, everybody in the restaurant sees those people that aren't being served, and the staff comes running to take care of you. Just pass that on to you, by the way. Try not to do it in places like Morton's. But if you're going to Arby's or somewhere else, do goalposts, and you'll be surprised how quickly you get service. Anyway, so we expect to be served quick. That's just a basic expectation. It's astonishing how many restaurants don't meet that basic expectation. And then they wonder why people say, let's not go there again. You have to wait for 15 minutes to get a glass of water. The second part of level of customer satisfaction is where you exceed expectations. And this is a form of thinking, creative thinking, innovative thinking. How could we do something that's a little extra? Has anybody heard of a baker's dozen, by the way? What is a baker's dozen? That's right. You order 12, they throw in an extra one. That's exceeding expectations. That brings a smile, like a blossom, like a sunrise, to the face of the person who just bought it. And they walk out, and their last impression of you was happy. And if their last impression from you was happy, where do you think they're going to go next time? They're going to come and they're going to shop from you because you made them happy. They have an unconscious association. Doing business with you makes me happy. And I like to be happy because everything I do in life is to be happy or happier, okay? So therefore, I will come back to you. Now, the third level is, the third level is where you delight your customers. And this is where you do something that's completely unexpected. You do something that makes them really happy. They hadn't even expected it. They brighten up. It's almost like a flashbulb. They go, wow. And it can be something as simple as going to the door and opening the door and saying, thank you very much for coming. We look forward to seeing you again. I mean, it's so unusual to do that. Here's something that Nordstrom's, it's called Nordy's, by people who go to Nordy's. Anybody go to Nordy's, Nordstrom? Here's what they'll do is the shopper, the person who serves you will call you at home in the evening and ask you if everything is okay. Did you enjoy your purchase? Did it fit all right when you got it home, and so on? And you hang up the phone and you walk away. You thought it was a telemarketer, raising money for your least favorite political party, and it was someone calling up to say thank you for shopping. Now, what are you likely to do next time when you go shopping? Right back to Nordy's, right back to that person. You're looking for that person, and they'll greet you like you are a long-lost relative that has just come back from overseas. I mean, they're really nice people. And finally, you amaze your customers. And this is an area that is restricted only by your own imagination. How could you amaze your customers? Here's something that Best Buy is doing. And Best Buy started doing this just after, the other company that went out of business? Computer Circuit City. You know what Circuit City did? Those smart people. They looked at all the money they were paying in commission to their top. They had something like 3,500 top sales reps spread out in all the stores all over the country. These people were making commissions. And because they were making commissions, they were extremely knowledgeable about the products that they were selling, so they really boned up on it. When people came in, they were experts. They said, we're paying these people too much money. They fired them all. And they hired people at minimum wage. We don't need to pay money for these people. Some genius in management who'd never sold anything in his life, they fired them all. They brought in minimum wage people and put them on straight salary. Didn't know anything what they were talking about. They expected people to just come in and walk up to the cash register with their complex computer products and so on. 6 months later, the company went bankrupt because people would never go back again. So then what did Best Buy do to raise the ante? They put together the Geek Squad. Heard about the Geek Squad? Because they're not always busy all the time, and they've got good people. So what will happen is when there's soft times, instead of them sitting around the store waiting for people to come in, they send them out on schedule to install your stuff for you at no charge and answer all your questions and make sure it works well. And if you have any problems, they'll come out and do it again. They don't charge you. Isn't that incredible? It's amazing. I mean, I'm here from the Geek Squad, and they got the little shirts and uniforms on and everything else to install it all for you. Do you think anybody will ever catch Best Buy? No. Because if you ever shop with them once and they do that to you, they amaze you so much, you're so happy you go back and tell all your friends. Are you with me so far? How could you do that in your business? What does it cost them? It doesn't cost them anything extra for the Geek Squad. It costs a little bit of gas and so on. It costs them very little, but the customer satisfaction, the delight, the feeling, the emotion, the happiness, the bragging that people do about their experience is wonderful. And the only limitation on this for you is your imagination. You can find a way, and sometimes it's just one little thing. So the purpose of, I don't want to get ahead of myself here because it's so good. Okay, we're going to do an exercise here, and this is really important. In creating a great customer experience, is we say fully 80% of the customer experience is determined by how customers feel after dealing with you. They say, this is a great company. And remember we said before, the key to your business success is for people to say, this is a great product, or this is a great service. And the key to customer satisfaction is for people to say, this is a great company. I'm sure glad I came here. You know, there's so number one, describe your ideal customer, the one you most want and need to be happy. There's no point in trying to make your wrong customer happy, because then you just get more of the wrong customers. The ones that don't pay, the ones that buy too little, the ones that complain all the time. Number two, define your perfect customer experience. By the way, many companies find that when they're growing, they will take any customer at all that can fog a mirror, okay? Because they need the business. After time, they start to grow, and they find that they've taken on customers who become what they're called customers from hell. They just are so difficult, they are so time-consuming, they're heavy maintenance, they complain, they don't pay, they're always grinding you, and so on. And so what they do is they make a decision that every year they're going to go through their customer books and fire the customers from hell. They're just going to get rid of them. They're going to encourage them to go somewhere else. And what they do is this. I've taught companies how to do this. What you do is this, to say, you know, we want you to be happy, but we don't really feel that we can make you happy. You're an important customer, and we just based on our experience, we don't have the resources to make you happy. So we'd encourage you to go to someone else who probably could make you happier. As a matter of fact, here's the names of a couple of our competitors whose lives you can go and ruin, okay? And what they do is they just use happiness as the way of encouraging them to go somewhere else. We can't make you happy, but perhaps they can make you happy, so why don't you go over there, all right? Number three, what do you offer or could offer in terms of the features and benefits? What's the difference between a feature and a benefit? A feature is a function that your product has, like multiple speeds. The benefit is that you can mix to different levels of quality because you have different speeds you can use. The feature is what it is, and the benefit is what it does that is of value to you. So what do you have in terms of features and benefits? And what improvements could you make in the way that you deal with and treat your customers? How could you improve your prices or terms to make them happy? Many people have transformed their business by just changing the way they charge. A minimum down payment, stretched payments, payments not till next year, which has now arrived. Number six, how could you make the customer experience faster, easier, and more convenient? And for example, what is the most successful online business in the world as a business? Buying and selling stuff. Amazon. What is Amazon? What did they patent? And they went to the Supreme Court to fight to keep this. What did they patent? One-click purchasing. You can go off and on Amazon in less than 30 seconds. They work and work and work, and they structure their front page and so on, so that if you decide you know the book you want, you can go psh, Amazon, psh, books, psh, title, psh, blip, click, click, and it'll be in your box in 3 days. You know what I'm talking about? It's now with Kindle, they have the Kindle, there you go, beep, beep, and it's in your hand within about 30 seconds. Why? It's because they want to make it easier and more convenient. The people who buy Kindles, within the first 30 days of buying a Kindle or now an iPad, they buy $200 to $300 worth of books. Because it's so easy to go, boom, boom, I'll take this, I'll take that. I mean, they're buying books, I'll buy a movie, I'll buy some songs. I mean, isn't that true? It's because they make it so easy, you sometimes have to come and slap your hand before you bankrupt the family. But here, that's very smart. Do you know what it turned into? Do you see their latest economic reports? Highest sales in their history, highest profits in their history, highest growth rates in their history, sold 20 million Kindles over Christmas. I mean, because they're making it easier. How could you do that? How could you find some way to do that in your business? 7, what 3 factors does your ideal customer want or value most in dealing with you? Not only write them down, but make sure that they're true. Find out. What additional services do you need to offer to satisfy and please your customers? Just look at your most successful competitors and you've got to beat them. Whatever your competitors offer, you have to offer as well, plus a little better. Number 9, what are the 3 minimum expectations your customers have and which you have to meet? What's the first minimum expectation that a customer has? Is that if they contact you, you'll be nice to them. You'll be pleasant and positive and smiling and friendly and grateful that they came. Do you know how many companies have wretched people on their front end? They have crummy people behind the desk or lousy receptionists answering the phone. Is the first thing they expect is that you'll be nice to them. You'll be grateful that they bought from you. The second thing they'll expect is that you'll deal with them promptly. The third thing that they'll expect is that you'll send the product out or service immediately. I mean, these are interesting enough, are not written expectations, but if you frustrate those expectations, you make your customer angry, and they'll not come back, and they'll tell all their friends not to come back as well. In what 3 ways do you meet or could you exceed customer expectations? In what 3 ways could you do something unexpected to delight your customers? What 3 things could you do that would amaze your customers? Wow. And what 1 change are you going to make to increase the quality of the customer experience? Please begin. I'd tell you a quick story. I've been reading on customer service and what I'm going to tell you about in this next session. And one of the companies that had immersed itself completely in this was a little company that used to rent used cars to people having their cars repaired in St. Louis. And they called it Enterprise. Today it's the biggest in the world. Now why is that? It's because about 10 years ago they began to install a new customer service process. And I'm going to mention it in a second, but the essence of it was this, is they kept asking their customers, every single customer contact, every single point of contact, what they call moment of truth, is how we doing? How we doing? How we doing? And everybody in the company got paid or promoted or moved up or sideways or downward or out based on the number, the quality of the answers they got. So I went up and I was going to rent a car, driving out of Oakland. I flew from San Diego to Oakland, going to rent a car, it's going to be gone for about 4 or 5 days. So I said, well, rent through Enterprise because I've heard all these good stories about them. So I arrive in Oakland and I go to the airport. They have a bus that takes you to the airport, the car rental terminal. And I go in and there's the Enterprise desk. And I walk in, I say, hello. They say, hello, how are you? And I said, I'm here to get my car. And they said, oh, are you Mr. Tracy? Like, just a guess. And I said, yes, well, your car's all ready for you. Here it is. And I said, thank you. I think I said, thank you very much. And she was very polite. And she said, how was my service? Was my service okay? Did you feel comfortable when you came? Are you happy? Is there anything I could do better next time? And I said, no, that was excellent. I said, how do I find the car? I said, well, you go out this door and down there and you go through the parking lot and you take an L. And so I said, okay, thank you. So I went out and I started out, and there's Avis and there's Budget and there's Hertz and there's National and Republic and all these car plants, and all their lots are full, okay? And so I'm starting on this grid written on with lines on the concrete number, and this person comes hurrying toward me. This woman comes hurrying toward me and said, are you Mr. Tracy? I said, yes. She says, very complicated here around here. Can I guide you to the car? And I said, sure. So I guided to the car, like a blind person, take my hand. And I go into the Enterprise lot, and the Enterprise lot is empty. There's this long lot, and instead there's only one car. It's an SUV. Now I rented a full-size car, medium full-size car, and there's only an SUV. And so I got there, and she said, are you thirsty? And she goes right into the shack. She brings you a cold bottle of water. It's really hot. This is summertime, about July. And I said, well, thank you very much. And let me show you to the car. I said, but we had a terrible problem. We really ask for your forgiveness, but we've rented all of our cars. All the other lots are full, by the way. And here's Enterprise. It's empty. It's like there's been a bomb scare in their lot. And I go out, and however, we do have an SUV available. And I'm going into the mountains anyway. And we'd love to give it to you at the same charge, same price as your previous car, which is about a $25 a day saving. Blah, blah. I said, would that be okay? Would that be? I said, sure, I'll take it. And so this little girl grabs my bags, lifts them up, puts them in, closes it out, has me check it out, says, is everything okay? I said, yes. Well, then you're on your way. Do you need any guiding, any driving instructions? Do you need a map or anything else? I said, yes. Well, here's a map, and she showed me the map. And then this fellow comes rushing out of the shack, and a nice guy, obviously a manager, comes, how was Susan's service? Was her service okay? And he said, yes, her service is, and she said, is there anything I can do to do better next time? And I said, no, it was fine. She said, that's wonderful. Thank you very much for coming to Budget. Thank you very much for coming to, Enterprise. Thank you for coming to Enterprise, and you have a good trip, and we'll see. If you ever have any problems, give us a call. We'll take care of it. And I'm driving away like this thinking, geez, they treated me like I was royalty. So anyway, I'd rent the car, drive it out, gone for 5 days, bring it back, and it's exactly the same in reverse. Thank you very much for coming. Did you have a good trip? How was the car? Everything else? Thank you. How was our service? Can we serve you better next time? And I came back to the office, and we had a staff meeting the following week, and I was telling them the story. And one of the guys in our meeting, he was on his way, his vice president was on his way to Florida on vacation with another friend of his, and they arrived in Orlando, and they needed a car. And they said, well, Brian just told us this incredible story. Let's check with Enterprise. So they go to Enterprise, and the people at Enterprise brighten up like, God, we haven't seen you. Oh, we're so happy to see you. Treated them like kings, said, how was our service? Word for word, exactly the same kind of service that I had gotten in the Oakland airport. And now they're the biggest in the world. They're consuming the other car companies, sort of like those Pac-Man in the old video games. Why? It's because everybody wants to be treated that way. Everybody wants to be treated that way. So this brings us to our next story. The purpose of a business is to create and keep a customer. Some people think the purpose of a business is to make a profit, but a profit is the result of creating and keeping a customer in a cost-effective way. The measure of business success is customer satisfaction. That's the only measure, that's the only way you can tell how well you're doing. And what is the measure of customer satisfaction? The answer is repeat business. Customers tell you they're satisfied because they come back and buy again. That's the only measure. If they don't, then they weren't. And that's why the most successful companies brag about how much of their business is repeat business. Sometimes 85% of their business is repeat business because their customers, once they have them, come back over and over again. So we say customer satisfaction, the true measure and purpose of a business is customer satisfaction. And so your business goals are, one, to get them to buy from you first. When you have a customer, a prospect in the marketplace, and they're looking at different alternatives, your competitors and so on, your job is to get them to buy from you rather than from someone else on their first purchase. Second is your job is to get them to buy again from you, and your third job is to get them to bring their friends. And this is where the rubber meets the road. The key is to get them to bring their friends. So the ultimate question, and this is the result of the research that enterprise car rental and many of the most successful companies in the world in different industries have installed, is this. The ultimate question is, would you recommend us to others? My friends at Bain & Company, there's a senior consultant there who is a founder of the company, and his name is Reichold. I think it's John Reichold. And Reichold, what he has done is in many decades of research, he's found that all the customer surveys and all the questions and everything that can all be boiled down to a single question is, would you recommend us to others? Based on your experience with us, would you recommend us to others? That question is more predictive of success and repeat business, profitability, growth, and a wonderful future than any other single question you can ever ask a customer. Would you recommend us to others on a scale of 1 to 10? So what Budget does, and what all the companies using, it's Fred Reichold, I'm sorry, the Reichold method are doing, is they ask people on a scale of 1 to 10, would you recommend us to others? They find that a 9 or a 10 is what is called a Net Promoter Score. This means that they will not only recommend you to others, they will tell everybody about their experience. A 7, 8, or 9, 7 or an 8 is a neutral. That means if they give you a 7 or an 8, they are satisfied, but they will go away. If they give you a 1 to a 6, it means that they're on the verge of leaving already. So every single customer interaction, these companies ask on a scale of 1 to 10, how did we do? Most companies don't want to know. They don't want to hear that answer, so they never ask. As a result, they make mistakes and they compound their mistakes. But the companies like Enterprise ask on a scale of 1 to 10, and your score predicts your future success. So this has become the big number. It's called the Net Promoter Score. If you have 100 customers and 20 of them rate you 9 or 10, and 80 of them rate you 1 through 8, your Net Promoter Score is minus 80 plus 20, so you got a minus 60. Average company in America has a minus 30 to 50. Now, the companies that are growing like wildfire are the ones that have a Net Promoter Score, so there's 51 or more people giving you a 9 or a 10 to 49 or less people giving you a 1 through an 8. Now, here's the wonderful thing. They ask you this question, Mark, if I was to ask you to grade us on a scale of 1 to 10, would you recommend us to others? What kind of a grade would you give us? Mark says, well, I would give you probably a 7. Now, we know that 7's not great. It's better than a 6 or below, but it's not an 8 or a 9, it's not a 9 or a 10. So then what do they ask? What's the next question? What would we have to do to get a 10? And Mark would tell me, well, if you just did this, if you just put water on the table and took my order sooner, and so whatever it happens to be, you say, the next time, he said, we'll do that. And they write it down, thank you very much. They send him a comment card, thank you very much for your input, we really appreciate it. Most of the requests don't cost very much money. Sometimes they don't cost any money at all. They're just making people a little happier, treating them a little nicer. And so what he would do is he would say yes, and they would then install the policy, call Mark and say, Mark, we've solved that. From now on, everybody's going to have water on the table as soon as they sit down, and the drink order will be taken within 4 minutes. Mark would suddenly go from whatever his score was to a 10. He'd be loyal to that company for life because they acted on his concern. This is all you have to do is ask them, what would it take to make you happy, and do it, and you'll have a customer for life. So, resale business, we say a happy customer is 10 times easier to sell to than a new prospect, which means it takes 1/10 of the time of cost and effort in terms of advertising, travel, sales presentations, and so on, to sell again to somebody who's happy. A la the Morton story I told you earlier. In referral business, a referral is 10 to 15 times easier to sell to than a cold call or a new customer. A referral from a satisfied customer is almost what we call a laydown. It's a slam dunk. Because if a person says, you should go to this movie, I'm going. I'm buying the ticket, I'm getting in there and getting a good place. You should go to this restaurant, I'm on my way. If I respect you and you recommend something to me, I'm going there. I'm not going to check it on the internet and do an analysis and light a candle and think about whether it's a good decision. I'm just going to do it because if my friend says it's good, that saves me all the thought and worry about making the decision myself. So a referral is 10 to 15 times more valuable. It takes 1/15 of the time and cost to get a referral sale and then to start off cold advertising, making cold calls, initial presentations. Are you with me so far? So your job is to get referral business. And the key to getting referral business is simply this, is be referable. Be a referable person. How do you be a referable person? You take such good care of your customers that they eagerly tell other people. They want other people to enjoy the same experience that you gave them. So, in getting referrals, the exercise is why do people buy from you in the first place? What value do they seek? What value do they expect? What value do they hope for? What are they dreaming that you will give them in your product or service at the very best? What do you do for your customers that no one else can offer? If you could wave a magic wand and have your customers describe you in a particular way, what would you want them to say? What do your customers expect of you to be satisfied, and so on? Please answer these questions. Please begin. Thank you. So what we say is this, is the aim and purpose of working is for you to enable you to create a high quality of life for yourself and your family. You must never get the cart before the horse. Many people get so involved in working, mostly men, for a variety of reasons, that they forget that the whole reason they're doing it is to provide a great standard of living for themselves and their families. And they get so preoccupied. I remember a story Barbara and I heard of this man. He came to our seminar, our Total Transformation seminar that we've talked about, and he was really down. Here's what happened. He said, well, he got so involved in his work, and he got involved in his work, and his wife kept saying he wasn't getting home on time, he was working late at night, and he wasn't spending time with the kids and everything else, and he just ignored her, just ignored her. One day he came home, and the house was empty. This is in California, Southern California. The house was empty, all the furniture was gone, it was abandoned. And his wife had packed and moved the whole family to Seattle. It took him 6 months to find her. He said he couldn't believe it. He just came home at night, opened the door, walked in, the place was empty. He said it was a real wake-up call for him because he got so preoccupied with his work, he didn't realize the reason he was working so it was he could have a good quality of life with his family. So we say live a great life. Now, when living a great life, you idealize, and this is one of the things that we've been teaching for years, and this is what top people do. Top people have the ability to project forward into the future and then practice what is called back from the future thinking. In other words, they project forward 5 years and they see their life as if it was perfect in every way, and then they come back to the present in their mind and they say, what would have to happen for me starting today to create that beautiful life in the future? So they think back from the future. It's a skill practiced by less than 10% of the population. So idealize your business. If your income was perfect, your business was perfect, your career was ideal in 5 years, and you should be thinking of making 2 or 3 or 5 times what you're earning today 5 years from now. Someone quoted, I think it was Mike who quoted me where I said that we greatly overestimate what we can do in 1 year, but we greatly underestimate what is possible in 5 years. In 5 years, if you decided to walk, you could walk around the world, maybe twice. Now, there would be some wet spots. But how far you could go by putting one foot in front of another starting today is really quite phenomenal. Think about your family. If your lifestyle was perfect, from what you did on the weekends, what you did in the evenings, what you did for family entertainment. One of the things that Barbara and I have always had as a principle is no regrets. And that means that whatever we would ever do with and for our family, do it now. So that if ever something happens, a plane runs into a mountaintop, we have no regrets. We say, oh, we shouldn't have put that off. We should have done it at the time. No regrets. Just do it. And lifestyle, home, vacations, what were the wonderful things you'd like to do with your family? And whatever they are, move them forward. Now, I studied a time management expert, and I stole his idea many years ago. I stole many ideas. They say if you take one idea, it's plagiarism. If you take many ideas, it's research. So I did many ideas, but here's the one idea. It says that time management is the ability to choose the sequence of events. To choose what you do first, what you do second, and what you do not at all. The sequence of events. And all of your life is determined by your choice over the sequence of events. So one of the things that I have always had as a rule is number one is family. My wife and my children always come first. No matter what, they come first. If Barbara wants to talk, I turn off everything. No television, no newspaper, everything stops. If my kids want to talk, everything stops. Everything stops for my family. Families come first. In my office, some of our staff have children. I have a rule. If ever you have a family need for one of your children, go. No deduction of time, no anything. You don't have to ask, just tell people you're on your way. If you have a problem with your children, children come first. And we've had that policy for 25 years, and it's just a great policy. It's a great philosophy for you to have as well. Your family comes first. Your health, your weight, your fitness, your energy, Chalene Supreme, in terms of exercise, is if your weight was perfect, what would it look like? How much would you weigh? How fit would you be? How much would you sleep? What kind of lifestyle would you have? What kind of foods would you eat? And so on. And just start to make the adjustment. Like a great ocean liner starts to change 1 degree at a time. It doesn't spin like a speedboat. It starts to change slowly by determining a new direction in the captain's control room on top. And that's your mind. Your financial situation. How many assets do you want to have? What kind of savings? What kind of income? Now, you notice people, John was talking about this, and I talked about it earlier. Some of the people, and Laurel was talking about, some people had it kind of unfair because I'd already introduced many of these concepts. Did you recognize them as they came up again? Nothing new under the sun, as it says in Ecclesiasticus. But income means how much income would you like to have coming in every month if you never worked again? It's one of the great ideal future visions. And then you come back to the present and say, what would I have to start doing today in order to start enjoying that kind of passive income sometime in the future, your number, and then take the first step. So here are the time quadrants with regard to life and work. First of all, we have quadrant 1. And quadrant 1 is activities that are urgent and important. These are activities that are in your face. They demand immediate action. These are usually activities imposed upon you by your work and your situation. You've got to meet with your boss, call on your customer, get this letter of proposal out to deal with this situation. They are pressing engagements. Most people spend most of their time in quadrant 1. Now, quadrant 2 is a very interesting quadrant. This is where it is important but not urgent. That means it's important but it's not urgent. And these are the areas where you tend to procrastinate. What is an important but not urgent task? Exercising, taking good care of your body. That's very important. But it's not urgent, so it's easy to put it off, especially if you do it late in the day. That's why all real exercisers exercise first thing in the morning. Get up and just do it, and you're done for the day. Reading and learning and upgrading your skills. Is it important? Yes, it determines the entire quality of your life, But is it urgent? No, it's something you can delay on. Here's the challenge: spending time with your family, spending time with your kids when they're young. Greatest regret that parents have is I did not spend enough time with my children when they were young. Barbara and I will never have to say that, because we did. Because we knew that was the biggest regret before we had our first child, so we made darn good and sure we wouldn't have it. Duh. You know. And so one of the important things is, as I said, upgrading your skills, spending time with your children, even meditation, even solitude, even relaxation, vacations. They're important, but they're not urgent. That's why they can be very easily put off. However, sooner or later, the not urgent becomes very urgent. The term paper that has to be in tomorrow at noon, or you lose your grade. How many people wrote their term papers the night before the deadline? Everybody did. The professor said, your term paper accounts for 50% of your grade. Begin working on it now. Get your subject approved. Assemble your research. Don't wait till the last minute, and everybody does. And now you're in panic stations, because if you don't get it done, you're going to lose the entire semester. So keep saying, what are the urgent things? This is called the quadrant of effectiveness. People who spend more time in quadrant 2 doing things that have long-term value are the ones who are the most effective and most successful. Quadrant 3 are things that are urgent but not important. Telephone ringing, messages popping up on your email, incoming mail, people want to chat with you, and so on. These are urgent because they're in your face, but they're of no value because they have no consequences. Whether you do them or don't do them now or later really doesn't make much of a difference. This is called the quadrant of delusion. This is where people delude themselves into thinking that they are working and they're doing something important, but they're really not. Because if they do it or don't do it, it really doesn't matter. And the fourth quadrant is the quadrant of things that are urgent, and not important. And this is the quadrant of waste. This is the quadrant of waste. This is where people waste most of their lives doing fun, silly, irrelevant, useless things. So what's the key to success is work in quadrant 1 and 2 all the time, and don't spend any time in quadrant 3 and 4. So let's do this exercise because it's really important, very simple and quick, is ask yourself, what are the urgent and important activities that take up much of your day? You know, and these are things you have to do. These are things that have to get done. These are things that determine sales and profitability. These are not things that you can avoid. 2, what are the not urgent but important activities that can have a major impact on your future? This is study. This is physical fitness. This is time with your family. This is planning time and thinking through things before you do them. Number 3, what are the urgent but not important activities that sidetrack you during the day? And unexpected interruptions, people dropping in, phone calls, and so on. Number 4, what are the activities that are neither urgent nor important that you can eliminate entirely? Now, here's one of the great secrets of life management, is you can only get your time under control to the degree to which you stop doing useless things, or you stop doing things that are of lower value than things that are of higher value. You cannot simply get your time under control by doing more things. You've got to stop doing things. So when you start off in the morning, you should start off with a to-do list and a not-to-do list. And you put all your irrelevant things that can be done tomorrow, next week, never, on your not-to-do list, and don't do those things until your to-do list is complete. Just eliminating things from your life can so simplify your life and increase your productivity as to be unbelievable, but it takes discipline. Number 5, what specific activities are you going to do more of in quadrants 1 and 2? What activities should you stop doing altogether so you have more time to do the things that really make a difference? What changes are you going to make in your time usage based on the above? And what one thing are you going to start or stop doing immediately? Now, just before you start this, I have some good news for you. And the good news is that in Business Growth Strategies, you have a complete time management course, which is considered by many to be the finest 12-part time management course in the business. It is sold all over the world in multiple languages, and many people say it literally transformed their lives. And it's available to you basically with one click. So if time management is a concern of yours, and time management is really life management, which determines your whole future, just be sure to make a note there. I'm going to take that course. I'm going to take one session a week. That's 20 minutes. Actually, they're even shorter than that, about 15 minutes. One session a week for the next 12 weeks. Just do that. And you'll double or triple your productivity. So please begin. What are your answers to these questions? Please begin. Now, interesting point. Everybody writes down under question 6, no more television, less television, don't watch television. And that's very smart. So what I do is this, I think television is the most marvelous technological device, but I just don't turn it on before 9 p.m. Television is not my life. I don't come home and watch television. And I turn it off when I'm not watching it. Sometimes I'll watch a little Fox News to get angried up a bit. But other than that, we don't have the television on. The television's not on. Sometimes we'll just play music in the background, no television. I won't watch television until after 9 o'clock. Just get into the habit of it. Now, if you're in the habit of coming home and just turning it on, see if you can't put it off until 7. And then after you put it off till 7, see if you can't put it off till 8. And instead of spending time on television, talk to the person who's there. Communicate. Go for a walk. Even go out to a movie. Go next door for something for dinner or something. But stay away from the television. Break the TV habit. If you can do that, you'll be amazed at how many more hours and valuable, deep, rich hours flow into your life. So the next exercise I want you to do is we called the business mastery and achieving balance and harmony. I jumped ahead of myself here. This is really important. Ooh, this is a great exercise. I love this. Oh, son of a gun. All right. We see achieving balance and harmony. The law of the excluded alternative says that to do one thing means not doing everything else at that moment. And remember I said to you that the superior thinker has the thought, or has the stimulus, and then the thought, and then the response. Whereas the average thinker has stimulus response. They get a stimulus and they react. Most people in our society just get stimulus and response. Whereas the thinker stops and thinks. And the thought in that moment is what you're going to do, what you're going to not do. And thinking about what you would not be doing. For instance, if you turn on the television, you'll not be communicating with your spouse or your children. You'll not be doing anything of value. And so you say, is this really the best use of my life? Is to turn on the television or to do something of no value. So remember this, whenever you choose A, you are automatically not choosing all other things. And the other things may be vastly more important to you. Practice creative abandonment, which means to think about the things in your life that take up time that you should no longer be doing. Mowing your own lawn, doing your own laundry and ironing, doing your own housekeeping and things like that. At one time, it was logical for you to do them, but these are things you need to free up so you have more time to do things that enrich your life at a higher level. And create, as we said before, a not-to-do list. These are things I'm not going to do anymore. Remember, we get into a habit, what we call a comfort zone, of doing certain things over and over, and sometimes those things have no further value to our lives. I'll tell you a quick story. This gentleman comes home, wife is cooking dinner, and she's cooking a pot roast. And she has the pot roast on the cutting board, and she takes a big knife and cuts the end off the pot roast and wraps it up, tin foil, and puts it in the refrigerator, and then puts the pot roast in the pan and puts it in the oven. And so he asks her, he said, honey, I've seen you do that lots of times. Why do you cut the end off the pot roast? She said, well, that's why you always cut the end off the pot roast. That's how you prepare a pot roast. I said, but what's the reason for it? She said, well, that's how I learned to cook from my mother. You always cut the end off the pot roast. They say, well, just for interest's sake, let's call your mother and ask her why we do that. So we called her mother across town. And she said, well, that's how you cook a pot roast. That's how I've always cooked a pot roast. I learned that from my mother. So her grandmother was still alive, so they called her grandma and said, Granny, why do we cut the end off the pot roast? She said, well, when your husband and I grew up in the 20s, when your grandfather and I grew up in the 20s, all they had was very little ovens and very little pans. And so the only way you could get into the pan was cut the end off the pot roast. So we started doing it at that time. They're now doing it 3 generations later. How many things are you doing 3 generations later that don't need to be done at all? Okay, so please answer these questions. What 3 things do you enjoy most when you're not working? What sort of activities make you happy? Reading, exercising, you can't spend all your time doing that other thing, so be a little bit more creative. Going for walks, come on, be creative here. This is going to be published in a family publication, okay? Number 2, what are your 3 most enjoyable vacation destinations? What if you're loaded with money? You can go to your favorite destination. You can even buy beautiful homes there. You could even have a private jet and fly there whenever you want. What 3 places would you pick? If you were forced to take a day off from work, what 3 things would you do? What are the most enjoyable leisure time activities you engage in with your family and friends? Please be a little creative, okay? Number 5, how would you spend your time if you only had 6 months left to live? What would you do with your last 6 months? Number 6, and this comes from Stanford, by the way, if you had $20 million in the bank, but only 10 years left to live, what would you do differently from what you're doing today? Number 7, what actions are you going to take immediately to increase your time off? And what one leisure time activity are you going to plan for right now? Please begin. Okay, please turn to the person next to you, and this is the final answer. This is the one thing that you're going to do immediately, above all, as a result of this seminar. This is the one promise you're going to make to yourself and make to the people at your table. So please tell them the one thing that you're going to do, and when you're going to do it, and how you will measure success. This isn't something like lose weight, manage my time better, spend more time at home, watch less TV. This is not an answer. It's got to be specific, measurable, and time-bounded. A child should be able to come and tell you if you did it or not. All right, so please tell the people at your table your answer to that last question. Now, could I ask you a special favor? Please take page 225 out of your binder. That's our evaluation form. And in the name of good customer service, we would love to get your candid opinion while it is fresh in your mind. And so put your name, and if you want to write colorful, cutting, hurtful remarks, you don't have to put your name. But we like your overall evaluation from 20, which is the very best, to 1, which is the poorest. Why did you rate it this way? What one idea will you apply immediately as a result of this seminar? Which guest speaker provided the most value to you? Of the sessions taught, which topic did you like the most? Are there any topics that were not covered that you would like me to talk about? And then on the back, we have some other questions about value and what would make your experience more valuable. Why did you decide to attend? What improvements would you suggest for future events? If you could fill this out, please, I'd really appreciate it. And as you're doing that, I would just like to wrap up by telling you a quick story. I was in Washington, D.C., speaking for a government department, $42 billion government department, and all their senior executives, including the secretary of the department. And at lunchtime, I was doing a 2-day seminar on team building, strategic planning, and creative thinking. And at the lunch break, they brought in a speaker, and the speaker was speaking on economics. And as I said before, economists become economists because they lack the charisma of engineers and accountants. And so he gave quite a good talk, and it was quite well received, and he got a lot of applause, and a good deal of humor, and so on. So I asked him afterwards privately, basically talking shop, how do you get a reputation? How do you become successful speaking on economics? Pretty dry subject. He said, well, there's 2 keys, he said. And we were talking privately, away from anybody else. He says, 2 keys. He said, number 1, if you want to be successful as an economist, know your audience, know what they do, and then link current economic events to their work, their life, and their business so that it's relevant. Everybody wants to know how the current economy is likely to affect them. He said, but number 2 is the key. He said, in America, he said, always predict growth. He said, 80% of American economic history or more has been growth. And it's been interrupted by recessions and depressions and booms and panics and so on and so forth, but 80% of the time it's growth. So no matter what's going on, it's always saying, based on my knowledge, I predict growth. You see, and no matter what's happening to the economy, it'll eventually come back up, and everybody say, boy, that guy was smart. He was predicting growth when everybody else was jumping out of buildings. So in your future, the moral of the story, in your life, always predict growth. Always predict growth for yourself. Always predict growth for your particular private business. Remember, in every industry, when 80% of the businesses are suffering, 20% are thriving. I know lots of companies that are in industries that are collapsing, and they're thriving, selling the same product, the same price, out of the same offices. So always predict growth in your life, because here is the truth. The truth is that the very best years of your life lie in the future. The happiest moments of your life lie in the future. The highest income of your life lies in the future. Your greatest accomplishments and richest, most loving moments, best experiences all lie in the future. As Shakespeare said, the past is merely prelude. What you've done up to now is just warming up for the great experiences you're going to have in the future. And this is how the top people think. You're the right people, you're in the right place, you've got the right skills and abilities and knowledge and ambition and desires, you are doing the right thing, and this is the right opportunity for you and I, and this is the right time in history. So your future is going to be the very best part of your life, and no matter what happens, you just keep remembering that, and that will come true for you. You will create a great future for yourself. And I thank you very much. God bless you for being here. Have a good trip home. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Jim. You're the best. You're the best.